This story is not made for video. It's a real lesson about trust, betrayal, and learning from others' mistakes.
The gate clicked behind me with a sound I'll never forget. Quiet, final, like the end of a chapter I hadn't realized I'd been living in. My heels crunched over the gravel path as I walked toward the side of the house, luggage wheels dragging behind me. The sun was still high, but the backyard was tinted with steam rising from the hot tub, and laughter. Light, breathy, careless. Hers and his. I froze. There they were. Dean leaned in too close, arms stretched along the edge behind her shoulders like it belonged there. Her head tilted back, eyes closed, the same way she looked on spa days I used to book for her birthday. His fingers touched her thigh under the water, subtle, but not enough to miss. And she didn't move. Her wine glass, half full, rested on the ledge. Her bikini strap was untied, floating lazily like it had nowhere to be. She didn't see me, neither did he. I stepped back, slowly, like I was afraid of waking something dangerous. Walked along the fence, found the side gate. My hand was steady as I turned the bolt. The latch dropped into place with a weight that settled deep in my chest. Then I pulled out my phone. "Lena," I said when she answered, her voice confused, "you'll want to come now, but bring someone you trust." She didn't ask questions. She heard something in my voice. I think I was beyond anger. I was past it. My voice sounded like glass. If you're still listening and any of this feels uncomfortably familiar, hit like and subscribe. Most people just listen in silence, but that one click tells the team these stories matter. The wind shifted as I waited out front, blowing the faint scent of lavender from the backyard, her favorite bath oil. I stared at the welcome mat she bought last fall. Home is where the heart is. She thought it was cute. I thought it was hollow now. 6 minutes later, Lena pulled up. Passenger side door opened and Mark stepped out, her older brother, corporate attorney, cold when he wanted to be. He didn't smile. I opened the front door, let them in, left the gate locked behind us. They followed me through the house, through the sliding glass doors that led to the deck. She turned first. Her smile dropped. Dean looked like he was waiting for the punchline of a joke he didn't understand. No one said a word. Mark pulled out his phone, started recording. She fumbled for the towel, nearly slipped climbing out. Her voice cracked around words like explain and mistake. I didn't even look at her, just reached into my pocket, held out my ring, and dropped it on the wet concrete. She didn't pick it up. Not yet. Dean's laugh died first. He saw us before she did. His whole posture stiffened, arms recoiling like he'd touched something burning. My wife followed his gaze and twisted around, confusion flickering before her expression collapsed into panic. I watched her grab for the towel with shaking hands, not even bothering to tie the loose strap that still floated around her. Lena stood frozen beside me. Her mouth didn't move, but I saw the betrayal settle into her like a storm cloud, quiet, heavy, ready to break everything it touched. She took one small step forward, then stopped herself. Mark didn't wait. He pulled out his phone, pressed record, and held it up like he'd done this before. The red light blinked. No one moved. My wife clutched the towel to her chest. "It's not what it looks like," she said, eyes darting between us as if one of us might nod, agree, give her a way out. "Then what is it?" I asked calmly. Dean tried to speak, some half-swallowed apology, but Lena cut him off with just a look. I could almost feel her heat rising, but she didn't raise her voice, didn't need to. The silence was louder than anything she could have screamed. My wife looked at me, pleading now, Can we please talk inside? Alone?" Mark kept the phone steady. He wasn't filming them for revenge. He was documenting. His face didn't show judgment, just the kind of cool detachment people use when they already know the outcome, and they're just here for the record. She reached for my arm. I stepped back. "Don't," I said. The towel slipped an inch. She clutched it tighter. Dean stayed seated, shrinking with every second. For all his gym hours and loud opinions, he suddenly looked small in the rising steam. I pulled something from my coat pocket, my ring, held it in my hand for just a moment longer. Then I held it out, palm flat. She stared at it like it was a weapon. "I guess you dropped this," I said. My voice didn't shake. She didn't take it. Not then. Behind me, Lena was breathing hard now, but still hadn't cried. Her hands were fists at her sides. I could see the tremor in her fingers, the same way mine had trembled an hour earlier when I first walked in. Mark finally spoke. "I'd recommend everyone remain civil," he said, voice like ice, "because this is now a legal matter, and I have enough footage, for now." Dean stood, water dripping down his legs. "This isn't fair," he muttered. Lena's laugh was sharp, almost surprised. "Fair?" she said. "Fair was 10 years of friendship while you were lying to my face." No one answered that. We turned to leave. I didn't slam the sliding door. I closed it carefully, like you would a book you never planned to read again. The gate stayed locked, and they stayed inside. For once, not in control of the story, by morning she'd rewritten the story 3 different ways. First, it was harmless. We were just talking. The hot tub was on. We'd both had a little wine. You blew it way out of proportion. That was her opening line in the voicemail she left at 7:12 a.m., like we were still on speaking terms. She followed it with another message 2 hours later. I know how it looked, but that's not what it was. By lunch, her version had evolved. Dean was venting about Lena. I was being a friend. That's all. "You know I'd never do anything to hurt you." The next one landed just after 3 p.m., the most desperate. I wasn't thinking clearly. Maybe I've been going through something. I felt invisible, like no one sees me anymore. That last part almost worked. Almost. But the internet didn't care about her feelings. Truth had legs, and one of them belonged to a kid named Aaron 2 houses down, 17, with a cheap Android and a very public Snapchat. He'd been walking his dog that evening, happened to glance over the fence when he heard giggling. Took 2 blurry clips. One caught Dean's hand, the other caught my wife's laugh, recognizable even without her face in frame. By sundown, someone tagged Lena, then Lena's sister, then 2 women from our circle who didn't even like each other but both had something to say in the group chat, and the group chat didn't stay private for long. Screenshots of her midlife crisis theory circulated fast. She started sending frantic messages. "Can we not turn this into gossip? And please, everyone, this is private." But nothing was private anymore. The curated image she'd protected for years, community board member, wine night host, brunch planner, started to unravel thread by thread. People weren't unkind, just quiet, which was worse. The silence after exposure is a kind of verdict. I didn't add anything to the conversation. I didn't have to. Lena didn't wait a week. She packed a bag that same night, left Dean standing in their kitchen, stunned and alone. The way she did it was surgical. 1 suitcase, 1 folder, 1 silent exit. Mark picked her up in the same car they'd arrived in the day before. No one waved. Meanwhile, my wife posted a filtered photo of a sunset from our patio. Caption, "Taking time to reflect." Comments were off. She wasn't just trying to rewrite the past. She was trying to survive the present. But once the image shatters, people stop squinting to see the best in you. They just see the cracks, the choices, the lines you swore you'd never cross but did anyway, and by then the truth was already breathing on its own. 2 days after the backyard, I got a call from her lawyer's assistant asking to set up a preliminary conversation regarding an amicable division of assets. She used the word amicable 3 times. I said nothing, just forwarded the message to Jonathan, my attorney, and went back to sipping black coffee at the kitchen island, the same one she and Dean once pretended to have their little innocent wine nights by. It didn't take long. Jonathan sent over 1 file, a scan of the post-nup we'd signed 5 years ago, 7 clean pages, her signature on every one. Page 7 was the quiet dagger. Clause 14, in the event of infidelity, emotional or physical, all spousal rights to jointly held property, assets, and investments shall be considered forfeited, effective immediately upon discovery, and enforceable without further negotiation. We drafted it after a friend of ours went through a messy split. At the time, she'd laughed it off. "Fine, if it makes you feel better," she'd said, twirling a pen between her fingers. "I'm not planning on running off with the mailman anytime soon." No, just her best friend's husband. Jonathan sent it over with a 2-line email. "Please find attached the binding postnuptial agreement. Clause 14 is active. Less than an hour later, her voice hit my voicemail. Soft, panicked, trying not to sound panicked. I know what I did was wrong, but I didn't think you'd actually enforce that clause. We always said it was more symbolic than anything. I mean, we built a life together. That has to count for something, right? Pause. I don't even want the house. Just, can we talk? Please? I didn't answer. Not then, not later. It wasn't about punishment. I didn't need her groveling. The clause wasn't revenge. It was alignment. A boundary she'd agreed to with a clear head in better times, when betrayal wasn't hypothetical. Her friends, what few hadn't ghosted her already, started whispering. The version she'd pitched, that I was being cold and unreasonable, didn't stick once they found out about the paperwork. One of them, Caroline, even reached out to me directly, said she was sorry, that she remembered the postnup. She said it was stupid lawyer theater. Caroline wrote, "Guess not." I didn't reply to her either. The strange thing about consequences is how quiet they can be. She expected a storm, a fight, maybe even a plea, but all she got was a clause with her initials on it and a silence she couldn't spin. She thought the worst thing I'd do was raise my voice, but I didn't need to. The paper did it for me. The screenshots started coming in late Sunday night. Lena didn't send them all at once. They arrived in quiet batches, 5 or 6 at a time, each one more precise than the last. Message threads, calendar screenshots, hotel confirmations. My wife had been careful, yes, but not careful enough. Patterns emerged, excuses recycled, words repeated. Work trip to Palo Alto. Girls' weekend in Sedona. Lena needed company after her breakup. Except Lena had never been in Sedona, and she hadn't broken up with anyone. The timestamps told their own story, so did the emojis, and the tone, soft, teasing half-whispers typed out at 1:43 a.m. from our bedroom while I slept 10 feet away. I printed everything, not out of rage, out of necessity. Each page slid from the printer like a verdict. I didn't read them twice, just stapled them into sections labeled by date, years of it layered under her smile, tucked behind her late returns and half-warm kisses. When the mediation session came, she walked in wearing beige. That always meant she wanted to seem neutral, no red lipstick, minimal jewelry. She thought she could still shape the narrative, but the manila folder on the table beat her to it. I slid it across to our mediator, Lauren, someone she had insisted on choosing for balance. Lauren opened the cover slowly, took a few minutes to scan the top pages. Her mouth tightened at the 3rd page. By the 6th, she stopped pretending not to react. My wife didn't speak. She just stared at the edge of the folder like it might disappear if she looked hard enough. Then finally, "Can we talk privately?" Her voice cracked in the middle. She reached toward me, not with her hand this time, but with her expression. The same one she used when she burned dinner or forgot our anniversary. The one that once said, "Let's not make this a thing." But this was already a thing, a documented one. A broken pattern printed in black and white. I nodded, just once. Then I said quietly, "We've said too much already." Lauren shifted in her chair, clearing her throat, gently moving the folder back toward the center of the table. No one touched it again. My wife wiped at her face with a tissue she hadn't realized she was holding. She still hadn't looked at the documents directly. That's how I knew the shame had finally settled in, not because of what she'd done, but because she no longer had a script to read from, not with Lena's receipts in the room, not when her own words were printed, time-stamped, and signed by implication. It was no longer an argument, it was evidence. It was Eric's birthday casual dinner, nothing flashy, just the usual spot we'd all gone to for years. Long table, half wine bottles already opened, stories being passed back and forth like bread baskets. I hadn't planned on staying long, just show my face, leave early, let things be normal for everyone else. But when she walked in, everything shifted. She hadn't RSVP'd. No one knew she was coming. She wore the dress I once complimented her on at our 10th anniversary dinner, pale green, off the shoulder. I used to think it softened her. Tonight it looked like armor. The room didn't go silent, but got quieter. Chairs adjusted, forks paused midair. I watched her scan the group, pretending not to notice how eyes flicked away when she made contact. I didn't speak, just gave a small nod to Eric, stood up, and placed my napkin on the table. That's all. But it was enough. Jasmine stood next, then Chris, then Layla and her husband. No speeches, no drama, just the quiet language of adults making a decision. One by one, they pushed their chairs back and left with me. We didn't say where we were going. We didn't need to. We just walked out. Behind me, I could feel her watching, waiting for anyone to stay seated. Some did. Out of discomfort, not loyalty. Others stayed because they weren't sure what to do. But half the table, her half really, was gone in less than 30 seconds. I never turned around. Didn't need to see her expression to know what it looked like. Later that night, Jasmine texted me. She didn't even touch her wine. Just sat there staring at the empty seats like they might come back. I didn't reply. Just stared at the message until my phone screen dimmed on its own. It wasn't about revenge, not anymore. It was about recognition, quiet recognition, that people had seen enough, that the masks had slipped and stayed off, that no carefully worded apology or social media spin could patch what had torn open in the middle of that backyard. She used to hold court at those dinners, used to arrive late and still command the room. Now she was just present, not welcomed, not even tolerated, just present and completely, unmistakably alone. Her message came late on a Thursday night. I saw the notification blink while I was folding laundry. Something simple, ordinary, something she never had patience for. You won't even speak to me? Just that, no punctuation. Like it slipped out of her fingers before she could decide how emotional to make it. I didn't open the message, didn't need to. The weight behind it wasn't new. I'd seen her spiral through denial, then damage control, then silence. Now she wants something else. Connection, recognition, a sign that there was still a door to knock on. But the house was empty. She was the one who emptied it. So I walked over to the top shelf of the hall closet and pulled down the small wrapped box I'd hidden months ago. Back when I still believed in anniversaries. Back when I thought a quiet dinner, a handwritten card, and a gift with meaning might still reach her. It was carved by hand, walnut, polished smooth, a tiny brass latch. I'd ordered it from a local artisan who inscribed the inside with 2 dates, the day we met and the day we said, I do. Inside, I had planned to place our rings side by side, mine and hers, on a bed of dark velvet just for one night. The idea was to remind us of what we promised before we forgot, but she hadn't forgotten. She'd overwritten it. Now I placed the rings inside without ceremony. The velvet had gathered dust. Hers was lighter than I remembered, maybe because she wore it less than I knew. Then I slipped in a card. No envelope. Just a note folded in thirds. I kept my vows. You just kept secrets. I didn't write a return address. I didn't need a signature. I mailed it to the last place she was living, the townhouse near Midtown. Lena said she was renting short-term, quiet neighborhood, close enough to feel familiar, far enough to make her feel untethered. The clerk at the post office asked if it was fragile. I said no. A few days later, Jasmine texted me. She got the box, no reply, but I heard she cried when she opened it. I didn't ask how she knew. Didn't want to know who was still close enough to report back. What mattered was this. It arrived. No loud confrontations, no hallway arguments. Just a small wooden box that didn't hold jewelry anymore. It held the line between who we were and what she chose. She said nothing after that. And I think, finally, she understood. Some goodbyes don't come with shouting or doors slamming. Some come in silence. Some come in wood and velvet and ink. The house was never just a house. She had picked every paint color, agonized over the backsplash, insisted the walk-in closet be hers entirely, even though she always ended up using mine too. It was her showroom, her proof-of-life project. When people visited, she'd gesture around like it was a museum of her taste. After everything, she still believed she'd walk away with it, even after the post-nup, even after the mediator pushed the folder of messages across the table. Some part of her clung to the idea that this house would be her soft landing, her consolation prize. But the paperwork didn't lie. She hadn't read the clauses carefully. I had. She listed it anyway, through a mutual friend's realty firm no less, thinking it would look amicable that way. It wouldn't stay amicable for long. When the realtor sign went up out front, I asked for one edit. Simple, clean, red bold font, placed just beneath the for sale sticker. The agent raised an eyebrow but didn't ask questions. He probably guessed enough already. Or maybe he'd seen the screenshots floating through our side of the circle. Sold. Buyer must value honesty. That was it. It stayed up for 3 days, long enough for every neighbor to walk past it twice. Long enough for her to see it. She came by on a Tuesday afternoon. I didn't know she would. I just happened to be upstairs, boxing old books. Heard the engine hum, then quiet. A pause. Then her tires peeled back onto the road harder than necessary. Jasmine texted me not an hour later. She saw the sign. She's livid. I didn't answer. I left the sign up an extra day. This wasn't about rubbing salt in wounds. It was about putting something into the world she could never quite cover up again. The truth. A single word she bent and shaped to fit whatever excuse she needed at the time. Honesty. She weaponized the illusion of it, built her image on it, but when the foundation cracked, it crumbled fast. Faster than she expected. Now the house she once curated down to the last indoor plant was no longer hers to walk through. No more white wine by the fireplace. No more dinner parties where she smiled too wide while lying through her teeth. Now even the lawn was part of the reckoning. I signed the final transfer the following week. Full payment cleared. Keys handed over. The new owners seemed quiet, grounded, a couple who looked like they didn't need to perform for anyone. I didn't keep a single copy of her renovation plans. Just the sign, folded, tucked away in the back of the same manila envelope where her excuses used to live. It started like most things do these days, quiet, viral, untraceable at first. A friend of mine sent a link with no context, just skip to the 38-minute mark. The podcast was called Witness to Unraveling. I hadn't heard of it before. Introspective, slow-paced, interviews with people who had lived through deeply personal implosions, family betrayals, fractured friendships, moments where the quiet things cracked loud. Lena's voice came on soft but measured, calmer than I expected, worn but clear. She never named names, never said Dean, never said my name, or hers, but anyone listening, anyone who knew, wouldn't have to guess. She spoke about betrayal not like someone who had been burned, but like someone who had stared at the fire long enough to understand it. She didn't cry. She didn't dramatize. That was what made it so powerful. Then she said it. He didn't yell. He didn't scream. He just locked the gate, and in doing so, opened ours. The host went quiet. You could hear the weight of that line settle into the silence, then a small inhale, and the interview moved on. That 30-second clip was reposted dozens of times in the next few days, on Instagram Reels, Twitter quotes, even TikTok edits with music underneath. The phrase became its own echo, used in captions about dignity, boundaries, self-worth. People didn't know the story, but they felt it. She did too. I know because someone sent me a screenshot of her comment history. She'd liked one post that used the quote, then unliked it, no comment, no reply, just a digital flinch. In one group, someone asked, "Who is this about?" And someone else responded, "You can tell she messed up. You don't get quoted like that unless you became the villain in someone else's healing." I imagine that stung. She had spent months trying to reclaim her image, trying to shift the narrative to something more palatable. We drifted. We weren't connecting. He was always distant. She'd tested every version of the truth except the real one. But this wasn't my voice anymore. It was Lena's, and it wasn't a courtroom. It wasn't a group chat. It was the public air, passed between strangers. She used to dominate a room without raising her volume. Now her silence was all she had left. She couldn't refute the quote, couldn't spin it, couldn't DM her way out of it. Because it wasn't about her anymore. She was just the outline in someone else's story, the blurry background to someone else's clarity, the one who taught us all what not to ignore. The gallery was quiet when she walked in. Late fall in Boulder. Cold outside, but inside the walls were warm, lit by soft track lights that followed the curve of the exhibit, my first solo series. I hadn't expected a crowd. I didn't want one. Just a few people scattered across the space, standing in front of black and white portraits of windows, locks, shadows on water. I saw her reflection in the glass before I saw her face, She stood near the entrance, hesitant, hair down, no makeup, no carefully rehearsed smile, just her, stripped of everything but intention. I didn't move toward her. I kept talking to the older couple in front of me about the shutter timing on a mountain shot, but I could feel her waiting. When the couple wandered off, she stepped forward slowly, like she was walking into a confession booth. "I just wanted to say sorry," she said. Her voice didn't shake. It was tired. "Not for what I did," she added after a breath, "but for what I destroyed." I looked at her. Not through her, not past her, just at her. There were no more layers left to peel, no more justifications waiting behind her lips. Her eyes weren't defensive. They were empty in a way I didn't recognize, like something finally broke that even she couldn't pretend to hold together. I reached into the small box behind the front table, where I kept old prints for people who wanted to take away, and pulled out one photo. I'd debated bringing it at all, but something told me it needed to be there. It was the shot she once had framed for my birthday. The two of us in Santorini, barefoot on a cliff, wind catching the edge of her dress. I'd taken it with a timer and hated it at the time. Too posed, too happy, too fragile. Now it was different. I'd cropped her out. Not dramatically, just enough to shift the focus. The frame held me alone now, facing the sea, the light catching only half my expression. The rest disappeared into distance. I handed it to her. She looked down at it for a long time. Her mouth parted like she wanted to say something else, but nothing came. She nodded once, held the photo carefully, and turned around. The door made a soft chime when it closed behind her. That was the last time I saw her. Closure, she thought, was about returning, revisiting, saying the words she never said when it mattered. But for me, closure wasn't a door swinging open. It was a frame, a crop, a choice, and I'd already made it.